Spain is fast-tracking the legal residence of almost all illegal migrants on its territory. The country is introducing regulations according to which anyone who has been there for at least 5 months will be granted legal residence. The government is implementing the decision by means of a so-called royal decree, which means that even parliamentary approval is unnecessary. This is the result of an agreement between two left-wing parties. How far away is Poland from such a solution? Spain, for centuries a bastion of Catholicism in Europe. Today, it is becoming a pioneer in the introduction of left-wing liberal ideologies. Leading the way to decline is Pedro Sanchez, the country's prime minister since 2018 and head of the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. Sanchez is a threat to Europe. The Spanish government is a threat to Europe. The Spanish government's latest initiative is the largest of its kind in more than 2 decades. Legislation has just been approved that will regularize the status of around 500,000 immigrants who have been living in the country illegally until now. The legislation will cover foreigners who have been in Spain for at least 5 months as of the 31st December 2025. Those who have submitted an application before 31st December 2025 may also apply for international protection. The regulations are expected to come into force within a few weeks in the form of royal decree. This makes it possible to bypass a similar bill that has stalled in Parliament. We want to regularize the status of thousands of foreigners in our country as soon as possible. According to government estimates, around 500,000 illegal migrants will benefit from the new regulations, but the number could be much higher. According to a report by the Funcas think tank, in 2025 there were nearly 840,000 people in Spain without regulated status and the necessary documents. Being able to walk down the street peacefully without the risk of being locked up in a detention centre, and being able to work with the rights that all of us who live here deserve. This is a step forward for our country. Although the initiative will help refugees fleeing armed conflict or persecution, it will also give legal residence to hundreds of thousands of people of unknown origin in the country and, consequently, in the European Union, as representatives of conservative Spanish parties in the European Parliament warn. These are people whose origins we do not know, whose criminal past we do not know, and whose intentions for entering Europe we do not know. Once they have obtained a residence permit, they will be able to move freely throughout the European Union. The move by Spain's left-wing government may come as a surprise, but similar regulations, albeit on a much smaller scale, are being introduced throughout Europe. Take Poland, for example. An example is the government's bill to phase out the provisions of the Act on Assistance to Ukrainian citizens, which has been passed by the Sejm and submitted to the Senate for deliberation. The opposition points out the risks that this entails. It cannot lead to a situation where everyone who was in Ukraine before Russia's full-scale aggression against Ukraine is covered by protection. This is because there were many, many Russians in Ukraine at the time, and we may have a situation where this leads to total destabilization. Mr. Kierwiński's bill, some provisions, even word for word, have been transferred from European regulations to national regulations. If we read about social benefits for foreigners, it is a repetition of European regulations from the Migration Pact. So today, under the guise of changing the regulations concerning Ukrainians, these provisions are essentially implementing the Migration Pact. Poland has been temporarily exempted from the mandatory relocation of migrants under the EU Solidarity Mechanism, but let's have no doubt that it will be implemented here. It is true that we have heard about the suspension of the quota that may be sent to us, but all the rest of the provisions are being implemented. And what will happen next year? If Poland behaves nicely and agrees to accept and implement regulations that are beneficial to Berlin and Brussels, then perhaps the Migration Pact will be suspended for another year. We can see the results of mass migration in Western European countries such as Spain. In Spain, we have reached historic levels of crime, crimes we have never seen before, gangs and sexual assaults on women and young people on the streets of Spain. We have a very serious housing problem because these hundreds of thousands of migrants do not live on the streets but use public housing and have priority over Spaniards. Millions of people living in our country do not work and live off the public system, while Spaniards pay increasingly higher taxes. Will Poles have to face similar problems to those in Spain? EU migration policy may lead us there.